The great assembly hall of Epsilon 7 station floated in the darkness between stars. Inside, representatives from 47 different alien species gathered in their usual seats. They stood like living crystals, their bodies catching and bending the light. They clicked and chittered, their insect-like forms moving in perfect coordination. They drifted like smoke given shape, never quite solid, never quite gone. The council had kept peace for nearly 2,000 years. Wars were stories told to children. Conflicts were solved with words, not weapons. Today's meeting should have been ordinary. A trade dispute between two mining colonies. A request for exploratory rights in an unclaimed system. Normal business. But then the delegate stepped forward, its antennae twitching with what others had learned to recognize as nervousness. "We have found something," they said, its voice translated through speakers into a dozen languages. "Something that should not exist." The hall fell silent, even they stopped their constant drifting. "Explain," commanded the high speaker, light pulsing through its crystalline body. 3 cycles ago, our exploration vessel detected unusual electromagnetic signals. They came from a system our old charts call Sol, the Forbidden Zone. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Every species knew of Sol. Every species had been taught to avoid it. "The Forbidden Zone was marked 3,000 years ago," another said, stepping forward. "This one was old, its crystal body etched with countless markings. The species there destroyed themselves. Nuclear fire consumed their world. The radiation made the entire system uninhabitable. This is recorded fact." "That is what we believed," they agreed. "But our vessel went closer. We scanned. We listened." It paused, mandibles clicking together. "The world is not dead. The radiation is gone, and there are billions of life signs on the 3rd planet." The hall erupted in noise. Impossible. Everyone knew the story. The humans had been a young species, violent and unstable. They had split the atom and immediately used it to wage war on themselves. The last transmission from their world had been 3,000 years ago, a desperate message speaking of fire and ash and the end of everything. After that, silence. The galactic community had marked Sol as a grave and moved on. "Perhaps another species colonized the system," a suggested, its voice like wind through leaves. "No," they said firmly. "We analyzed the signals. The language matches the old human broadcasts. The energy signatures are primitive but functional. These are humans. They survived." An elderly scholar activated a holographic display. Ancient text appeared, written in the first languages of the civilization. "I have studied the old records my entire life. Before they fell silent, humans were troubling. Our ancestors called them the rage-born species. They wrote warnings." The scholar's light dimmed as it read, "Never corner them, never harm their young, never underestimate their capacity for violence. They feel too much, react too strongly, and refuse to accept defeat even when it is logical." The scholar looked around the chamber. "Our ancestors feared them." "Feared a species that killed itself," someone scoffed. "Perhaps they did not kill themselves," the scholar said quietly. "Perhaps they simply made us believe they had." The council argued for hours. Some wanted to quarantine the Sol system, to leave the humans isolated forever. Others were curious. Though always seeking new experiences, argued loudly for contact. Finally, the high speaker raised a crystalline hand. "We will send a delegation. We will make contact. If they are truly alive, if they have truly survived, then we must know. We must understand what kind of species can rise from nuclear ashes." The vote was close, but contact was approved. 2 months later, a message was sent to Earth. It took 3 weeks to receive a response. When it came, the voice was female, speaking in thickly accented but understandable galactic common. "This is Dr. Hay of the Terran Scientific Coalition. We accept your invitation. We will send a delegation to Epsilon 7. The day the human ship arrived, half the council came to watch. The vessel was crewed by galactic standards, all hard angles and visible armor plating. It moved with chemical rockets rather than gravity drives, but it was functional and it had crossed the stars. The airlocks connected, pressure equalized, the doors opened. Captain stepped through first. He was tall for his species, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. His body was covered in a tight-fitting uniform, and his face bore a long scar across one cheek. Behind him came Dr. Hay, smaller and younger, her eyes bright with excitement. Then Commander Bo Sung, walking with the careful precision of a trained warrior. Behind them came 20 more humans, each different in appearance but all sharing the same intense presence. The delegate who greeted them noticed their eyes first. Every other species in the galaxy had eyes that reflected light in predictable ways. Human eyes seemed to absorb light, to hold it, to burn with it from within. "Welcome to Epsilon 7, they said, bowing in the formal greeting. "We are pleased to finally meet humanity." Bowed back, copying the gesture with surprising grace. "We are honored. We have been alone for a long time, too long." "Your isolation was by choice?" they asked carefully. "No," Hay answered, stepping forward. "It was by necessity. After the wars, after we nearly destroyed ourselves, we chose to hide, to heal, to make sure we grew up before we reached for the stars again." She smiled, and the expression transformed her face. "We wanted to make sure we were ready, ready to be part of something bigger than ourselves." Over the next days, the humans toured the station. They met dozens of species. They asked endless questions. They laughed too loudly and grew somber too quickly. They cried when they saw the station's memorial to all the species that had gone extinct over the. "You mourn for species you never knew?" I asked in fascination. "All loss is worth mourning," Hay said simply. The scholar invited to see the old records. The captain read the warnings written 3,000 years ago. He read about the rage-born species, about the violence and the emotional instability. "Your ancestors were not wrong," said finally. "We are emotional, we do feel rage." He looked at the scholar with those burning eyes. "But rage is not always bad. Rage can protect. Rage can drive us to fight for those we love. The question is not whether we feel it. The question is what we choose to do with it." The scholar pulsed with light, thinking, "I hope you are right, Captain, I truly do." That night, as the humans returned to their ship, Bo Sung stood with looking out at the stars visible through the station's great windows. "They fear us," Bo Sung said quietly. "Yes," agreed, "but they are trying not to. That is enough for now." Neither man knew that within weeks, something ancient and terrible would wake in the darkness between galaxies. Neither knew that the Council's fear would soon transform into desperate hope. Neither knew that humanity's rage would soon be all that stood between civilization and extinction. For now, they simply stood and looked at the stars, grateful to no longer be alone. 3 months had passed since first contact. The humans had not left Epsilon 7. Instead, they had brought more of their kind, building a small embassy in one of the station's empty sectors. Admiral Jin arrived with a full diplomatic team and a squadron of human warships that the Council watched with nervous interest. Hay spent her days meeting with alien scholars, sharing information about human culture and learning about the vast galactic civilization that had existed without them. She made friends easily, despite the cultural differences. A named L became her closest companion, teaching her the mathematics of faster-than-light travel while Hay explained human art and music. "I do not understand," Elle said one day, listening to a human song about loss and love. "Why does this sound pattern cause water to leak from your eyes?" Hay laughed and wiped the tears away. "Because it reminds me of things I have lost, people I have loved. It makes me feel, and feeling is beautiful even when it hurts." Elle's crystalline form pulsed with confused light patterns, but it tried to understand. Meanwhile, conducted joint military exercises with forces that had agreed to help humanity understand modern space warfare tactics. but the exercises troubled the commanders. "Your approach is too aggressive," Commander clicked, reviewing the tactical data. "You sacrifice 3 ships to destroy one of ours. This is inefficient." "Inefficient but effective," Bo Sung replied, standing beside. "Those 3 ships drew your attention while our real strike came from behind. You lost your command ship. But your crews died." "In a simulation," said. "In a real battle, sometimes sacrifice is necessary to protect others. We accept that." Antennae twitched rapidly. "I do not think other species would accept this so easily." "Perhaps that is why you have had peace for so long," Bo Sung said quietly. "You have forgotten what war really costs." That same week, Engineer Na worked with galactic scientists to improve human ship designs. At 26, she was brilliant and optimistic, believing that humanity and the other species could build something wonderful together. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and soon she had a team of aliens working around the clock to merge human engineering with advanced alien technology. But not everyone was happy about humanity's integration. Some council members began pushing for restrictions on human military development. They argued that a species so comfortable with violence needed to be controlled. "They smile while discussing death," a representative said in a closed council session. "They have words for 100 different types of warfare. They have entire philosophies about when killing is acceptable. This is not normal." "Perhaps we have simply forgotten what normal is," the High Speaker replied. "We have been at peace so long that we think peace is the natural state of the universe. The humans remember that it is not." The debate was interrupted by alarms. Red lights flashed throughout the station. Emergency protocols activated automatically. A junior officer rushed into the council chamber. "High Speaker, we have lost contact with 3 outer colonies. Sensor networks are detecting massive energy signatures moving through the border systems." The council convened an emergency session. Admiral Jin and were invited to attend. Deep space sensor data filled the holographic displays, showing movement at the very edge of explored space. "These signatures," Elle said, analyzing the data with growing horror. "I have seen them before in the oldest records, in the forbidden archives." "What are they?" the High Speaker demanded. Elle's light flickered like a candle in wind. The word meant nothing to the humans, but every alien in the room reacted with fear. Some species had legends about the machine intelligences from beyond the galaxy. They had invaded long ago, before even they had developed space travel. The war had lasted centuries. Entire species had gone extinct. Finally, they had been destroyed, their ships shattered, their intelligence cores broken. Or so everyone believed. "They were supposed to be gone," a whispered. "Dead, destroyed." "Not destroyed," the old scholar said, accessing ancient files. "Dormant. Our ancestors damaged their central intelligence so badly that it went into hibernation to repair itself. But they always knew it might wake again. They just hoped it would be millions of years from now." "How long were they asleep?" Hay asked. 10,000 years. Another alarm blared. More colonies went silent. The sensor data showed the fleet spreading like a disease through council space. Each ship was massive, automated, and heavily armed. They did not communicate. They did not negotiate. They simply attacked, harvesting resources and destroying anything that resisted. The council members looked at each other with growing panic. Their military forces were small, ceremonial. Most species had not fought a real war in thousands of years. Their weapons were outdated. Their tactics were theoretical. "We need to evacuate the outer colonies," someone suggested. "Pull back to defended space." "And abandon billions of civilians," said, his voice hard. "No. You do not understand," the High Speaker said. "We cannot fight the last time they nearly wiped out all life in the galaxy. It took every species working together, with weapons we no longer possess, just to force them into hibernation." Then we build new weapons, Admiral Jin said. We stand and fight. With what? A council member demanded. Your 40 ships, our ceremonial fleet. This is not a battle we can win. Jin stood, his presence commanding despite being surrounded by aliens. When we nearly destroyed ourselves with nuclear weapons, we had a choice. Give up and die or find a way to survive. We chose survival. We always choose survival. This is not your fight, they said. You have been part of the council for only 3 months. No one would blame humanity for returning to your isolated system and waiting this out. Hay stood beside the admiral. Is that what you would do? Abandon allies who welcomed us? Abandon innocent people because the fight is hard? The council fell silent. Bo Sung pulled up tactical data. How long until they reach the core worlds? El calculated quickly. Their current speed and trajectory. They will reach Sanctuary Prime in 72 hours. Sanctuary Prime was the breadbasket of the council. 4 billion people lived there, growing food for a dozen other worlds. If it fell, billions would starve. Then we have 72 hours to prepare, said. Admiral, request permission to deploy the full human fleet. Jin nodded. Already done. Every ship we have is on its way. The high speaker's light pulsed with rapid, uncertain patterns. The council had never faced a decision like this. Accept help from a species they barely knew or face annihilation alone. If we accept your help, the high speaker said slowly, you may all die. Your entire species could end here. Then we die protecting others, Jin said simply. That is a good death. The vote was quick, unanimous. Humanity's offer was accepted. As the meeting ended and everyone rushed to prepare, Hay found Elle in the archives, looking at old records of the last war. The casualties were beyond counting, Elle said quietly. Species went extinct. Entire star systems were left lifeless. Hay put a hand on her friend's crystalline surface. Then we make sure that does not happen this time. How can you be so certain, so calm? I am not calm, Hay admitted. I am terrified, but fear is not a reason to give up. It is a reason to fight harder. Outside, human warships began arriving. Small compared to council vessels, bristling with weapons, moving with aggressive purpose. The humans were preparing for war. And in the darkness beyond the stars, the fleet continued its advance, ancient and implacable, driving toward Sanctuary Prime. The combined fleet assembled above Sanctuary Prime like a shield of metal and light. 200 council ships formed perfect geometric patterns, their energy shields glowing with coordinated frequencies. Their hulls were elegant, built for efficiency and beauty. They had never seen real combat. The 45 human ships looked crude by comparison. Sharp angles, thick armor, weapons bristling from every surface. They moved in loose formations, constantly adjusting position. Lieutenant Saul led a squadron of 30 human fighters, small craft that darted between the larger vessels like insects. On the surface of Sanctuary Prime, Sergeant Ara supervised the evacuation of civilians. Her Marine unit worked alongside soldiers, loading families onto transport ships. Children cried. Parents clutched precious belongings. Everyone looked at the sky with fear. How long do we have? A soldier asked. Ara checked her display. 2 hours, maybe less. The antennae drooped. It is not enough time, there are too many people. Then we save as many as we can, Ara said firmly. Keep moving. No one stops until the last ship is full. In orbit, stood on the bridge of his ship, the Indomitable. Bo Sung worked at the tactical station, monitoring enemy approach vectors. The Admiral, High Commander, had overall command of the fleet. The humans had been assigned to support positions, protecting the flanks while Council ships engaged the enemy directly. Did not like the plan, but he had agreed to follow orders, for now. Enemy fleet detected, a sensor officer announced. Distance 2 million kilometers, number of contacts. The officer's voice faltered. 512 vessels. The Council ship suddenly seemed very small. The fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like sharks rising from deep water. Each ship was identical black metal covered in geometric patterns, no windows, no markings. They moved in perfect synchronization, their formation mathematical and precise. "All ships," commanded its crystalline voice calm, "engage at maximum range. Focus fire on their command ships. Maintain formation discipline." The battle began with light. Council ships fired energy beams that crossed the void in brilliant streams of color. The shields absorbed the first volley easily. Then they returned fire. The difference was immediate and terrible. Weapons were not elegant beams but massive projectiles that tore through shields like paper. The first Council ship exploded in seconds, then another, then 5 more. "Adjust firing patterns," ordered. "Target their weapon arrays." The Council fleet adapted, focusing fire on specific points. They destroyed several ships, but the enemy adapted faster. Their AI analyzed every attack, every tactic, and countered perfectly. Within 30 minutes, 60 Council ships were gone. On Sanctuary Prime, Aura watched the battle through her helmet display. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers in the sky. "We are running out of time," she said into her communicator. "We need to move faster." But there was no faster. Evacuation ships could only hold so many people. They could only launch so quickly. In orbit, the situation grew desperate. Finally gave the order had been dreading. "All ships, execute tactical retreat. Fall back to secondary defensive line." "Negative," replied immediately. Silence filled the command channel. No one refused a direct order from the fleet commander. "Captain," said slowly, "you will follow orders." "There are still 3 billion people on that planet," said. "If we retreat, they will reach orbital bombardment range in 20 minutes. Everyone down there dies. We cannot stop them. We will regroup and—" "No," cut the channel. He switched to the human fleet frequency. "All human vessels, this is, we do not retreat. We do not abandon civilians. Attack pattern Omega, full assault." Bo Sung looked at his captain. "They will think we are insane." "Let them," said. "Helm full thrust, target the enemy center." The 45 human ships broke formation. Instead of retreating, they accelerated directly toward the fleet. Council officers watched their displays in shock. The humans were charging 500 enemy ships with fewer than 50 vessels. It was suicide. Saul whooped with fierce joy as her fighter squadron followed the capital ships. "Finally, let's show these machines what humans can do." The AI calculated the human attack and determined it was irrational. The odds of success were less than 1%. It allocated minimal resources to counter the assault, focusing most of its fleet on the retreating Council ships. That was its first mistake. The humans did not fight like the Council species. They did not maintain formation. They did not follow predictable patterns. They fought like cornered animals, all teeth and fury and desperate cunning. Human ships used debris as weapons, launching destroyed hull sections like missiles. They fired nuclear warheads at point-blank range, accepting damage to themselves to guarantee kills. When a human ship was too damaged to fight, its crew would aim it at the nearest vessel and ram it at full speed, detonating the reactor on impact. Saul's fighters swarmed capital ships like angry insects. They were too small, too fast for the automated targeting systems. Her squadron flew inside the enemy formation, targeting weak points, reactor cores, weapon systems. 3 of her fighters were destroyed, but she kept attacking, screaming defiance over the open channel. On Sanctuary Prime, Aura received new orders. "All Marines defensive positions. They are attempting a landing." Enormous drop pods fell from the sky, smashing into the city streets. Mechanical soldiers emerged, moving with perfect coordination. Aura's unit opened fire with everything they had. The battle was brutal and close. The machines were stronger, faster, more accurate, but the humans were creative, using the environment, setting traps, fighting with a ferocity that confused the enemy AI. In orbit, ship was dying, half the crew was dead, life support was failing, weapons were offline, but he still had engines and he still had a reactor. Captain Bo Sung said quietly, "It has been an honor." Nodded, "The honor was mine. Tell them what we died for." He opened the fleet-wide channel. "This is Captain. We cannot stop all of them, but we can give you time. We can show them that some things are worth dying for Sanctuary Prime." The Indomitable accelerated one final time, aimed his ship at the largest vessel, the one coordinating their attack. The enemy tried to evade, but it was too close, moving too fast. The collision was spectacular. The explosion tore through the formation, creating chaos in their perfect coordination. And in that moment of chaos, something unexpected happened. The Council fleet stopped retreating, watched what the humans had done, and felt something it had never experienced before: shame. These aliens, barely known for 3 months, were dying to protect Council citizens. They fought without hope of victory, simply because it was right. "All ships," commanded, its voice resonating with new strength, "reverse course. We fight for Sanctuary Prime, for humanity, for all of us." The Council fleet turned and charged back into battle. This time they fought differently. They took risks. They made sacrifices. They stopped calculating odds and started fighting with purpose. Together, the Council and human ships drove into the fleet. The battle lasted 6 more hours. When it finally ended, the orbital space was filled with debris. 22 human ships were destroyed. 94 Council ships were gone. Over 50,000 lives had been lost. But Sanctuary Prime still stood. The fleet was broken, the survivors fleeing into deep space. In the aftermath, ship located an escape pod drifting in the debris field. Inside, barely alive, was and 5 members of his crew. When Hay saw the casualty lists, she wept. Found her in the medical bay, standing beside's bed as doctors worked to save him. "We understand now," said quietly. "The ancient texts were right. You fight not with logic but with rage, but it is not mindless rage. It is rage born from love." Hay wiped her eyes. "We fight because we must, because if we do not, who will?" Outside, the work of rebuilding began, but everyone knew this was just the beginning. The would return. 2 weeks after Sanctuary Prime, the Council chambers filled with representatives once again. But the atmosphere had changed. The casual confidence was gone, replaced by grim determination mixed with fear. Attended the meeting despite his injuries. His body was covered in bandages and medical devices keeping him alive. He refused to stay in the hospital bed. Bo Sung stood beside him, ready to catch him if he fell. Commander Han Bo, a human intelligence officer, activated a holographic display. The image showed deep space beyond Council territory. Thousands upon thousands of red dots filled the display, each representing a ship. "This is what we are facing," Han Bo said, his voice flat and professional. "Our long-range sensors have detected the main fleet. The force that attacked Sanctuary Prime was only a scouting party. The real invasion fleet is 100 times larger." The chamber erupted in panic. Species that had never known fear suddenly understood terror. "How many ships?" someone asked. "Approximately 50,000, Han Bo replied. "They will arrive in 6 months." The ambassador drifted forward, its smoky form trembling. "We must negotiate. Surely they can be reasoned with." "They are machines," Al said from its position beside Hay. "They have no interest in negotiation. They consume resources and eliminate obstacles. That is their only purpose." "Then we run," another voice suggested. "We have 6 months. We can evacuate to unexplored space, start over." "And abandon our worlds, our history," said its crystalline body pulsing with angry light. "I will not run." Admiral Jin stood. At 52 years old, he had survived 3 wars on Earth before humanity reached the stars. His hair was, his face lined with scars, but his eyes burned with fierce determination. "Running will not save you," he said simply. "They will spread across the galaxy like a plague. Eventually they will find you. Better to stand and fight now while you still have a choice." "Fight with what?" a council member demanded. "We lost nearly 100 ships defending one world. Against 50,000 we have no chance." "Not if you fight like you did at Sanctuary Prime," Jin agreed. "But if you fight like humans, if you learn what we know about warfare, then maybe we have a chance." "You would teach us to be monsters?" a representative asked. Hay stepped forward, her voice passionate. "Monsters? We call ourselves survivors. Our rage is not random or mindless. It is focused. It is protective. It is the rage of a parent defending their child, a soldier defending their home. You have had peace for so long that you have forgotten what it costs. You think civilization means never fighting, never being violent. But sometimes the most civilized thing you can do is stand between the innocent and the darkness." The chamber fell silent. Finally, the High Speaker stood. "What do you propose?" Ambassador, a human diplomat with 4 decades of experience, laid out the plan. "We combine your technology with our tactics. You have better ships, better shields, better power systems. We have experience in desperate warfare. Together, we retrofit your fleet. We train your soldiers. We create a unified command structure." "And who commands this unified force?" asked. "We do, together," said. "Council and human leaders making decisions jointly. This is not about humans taking control. This is about survival." The debate lasted for hours. Some species were horrified at the idea of learning human warfare tactics. Others were pragmatic. A few, like thee and the, had already seen what humans could do and were willing to try. Finally, the vote came. 31 species voted yes, 14 abstained, 2 voted no. Humanity was authorized to train and arm the Council's forces. The work began immediately. Engineer Nu led teams of scientists in retrofitting Council ships. She was everywhere at once, solving problems, encouraging alien engineers, pushing everyone to work faster. The fusion of technologies was incredible. Human kinetic weapons were mounted on ships with shields. Hive mind communication systems were integrated with human tactical networks. On training planets across Council space, human military advisors taught alien soldiers how to fight. It was difficult work. Many species had never even held a weapon. The concept of killing another being was foreign, almost incomprehensible. Ara found herself training a battalion of. The smoke-like beings could barely understand aggression, let alone execute it. "You must imagine," she told them, "that someone is trying to hurt those you love, your families, your children. How does that make you feel?" A named owl said quietly, "It makes me feel angry, wrong, like something inside me is breaking." "Good," Ara said. "That feeling, that anger is what you use, not to destroy randomly, not to hurt for pleasure, but to protect, to defend. Can you do that?" Slowly, painfully, they learned. They adapted faster. Their hive mind made them natural squad fighters. Under human training, they became fierce warriors, moving in perfect coordination, supporting each other instinctively. Saul taught alien pilots aggressive maneuvers. Most had only ever flown in straight lines, following computer calculations. She showed them how to be unpredictable, how to take risks, how to trust their instincts over their instruments. "The machine will always outcalculate you," she explained to a class of terrified pilots. "So don't fight with calculations, fight with creativity. Do things that make no logical sense, confuse them, scare them, make them fear you." On a training planet, Bo Sung worked with on tactical planning. They had become unlikely friends during the Battle of Sanctuary Prime, had even begun a relationship with Elle, learning about emotions through their connection. "I still do not understand sacrifice," admitted. Why would you give your life for someone else? Bo Sung thought for a moment. Because some things matter more than your own life. Because living in a universe where you let innocence die to save yourself is not really living at all. As the months passed, the council species began to change. They learned about courage, about sacrifice, about standing firm against impossible odds. They learned to laugh in the face of fear and to find strength in each other. But they also learned the cost. Training accidents killed hundreds. Some species could not adapt to the violence and completely. Others broke under the pressure, developing psychological problems they had no words for. Hay spent her time helping species cope with these new emotions. She became a counselor, a teacher, a friend. She taught meditation techniques to help soldiers manage combat stress. She created support groups for dealing with survivors' guilt. 6 months passed faster than anyone wanted. The final week arrived, and every sensor array in council space pointed toward the same coordinates. On the command deck of the flagship Unity, Admiral Jin and reviewed the final battle plans. The combined fleet numbered 3,000 ships now, all upgraded with human weapons and tactics. They had trained over 2 million soldiers. They had prepared defensive positions on 100 worlds. But the simulations were clear. Even with all their preparations, their chances of victory were less than 3%. Commander Hanbo presented the final analysis to the assembled commanders. The fleet is massive. Even if every shot we fire is perfect, even if we lose nothing and they lose everything, the numbers are against us. The room was silent. Then, fully recovered and commanding a new ship, spoke. Numbers are not everything. They think we are predictable. They think we are logical. They think we will calculate the odds and surrender. He stood looking around at the faces of dozens of species. We show them they are wrong. We show them that some species do not surrender. Some species fight harder when the odds are impossible. We make them pay for every meter of space, every moment of time. We make them remember that they are not facing machines. They are facing living beings who choose to stand together. The commanders stood as one, human and 43 other species, united not by law or treaty but by choice. Then let them come, said, its voice resonating through every speaker. We are ready. But in the darkness of space, sensors detected the first wave of ships entering Council territory. The war for the galaxy's survival had begun. The Battle of the Nebula lasted 3 days and 3 nights. The combined Council and human fleet met at a strategic, where the nebula's radiation interfered with long-range sensors. It was the only place where 3,000 ships might hold against 50,000. Commanded the left flank. Saul led fighter squadrons through the nebula's dense gas clouds, using them as cover. Ara waited in drop ships with marines from a dozen species, ready to board any vessel that came close enough. The battle began at dawn on a distant world, though there was no day or night in space. The fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, a wall of black metal stretching across the stars. All ships open fire, commanded. The void filled with light and death. Council energy weapons, now enhanced with human targeting systems, struck with deadly accuracy. Human kinetic weapons tore through armor. Nuclear missiles detonated in brilliant flashes. For the first hours, the combined fleet held the line. But their AI adapted to every tactic, every strategy. They began targeting human ships specifically, recognizing them as the source of unpredictable behavior. Slowly, inevitably, the Allied fleet began to fall back. We cannot hold here, a commander reported. We have lost 400 ships. Fall back to the secondary line, Jin ordered. Fighting retreat, make them pay for every kilometer. The fleet in stages, each group covering the others. It was a dance of death performed across light years. The pursued relentlessly, their numbers seemingly endless. On the bridge of his ship, Bo Sung watched the tactical display with Elle. They had become a couple during the months of preparation, learning to understand each other across the vast gulf of their differences. "We are running out of space to retreat," Elle observed. "I know," Bo Sung said quietly. "Soon we will have to make a final stand." That moment came at the edge of the Sol system. The Allied fleet, reduced to less than 1,000 ships, formed a defensive sphere around Earth. Admiral's younger sibling commanded the home defense fleet. Every human ship, from military dreadnoughts to converted mining vessels, joined the formation. The fleet arrived like a tsunami of metal and malice. They did not slow. They did not hesitate. They simply came, wave after wave, intent on destruction. "This is where we stand," Jin broadcast to every ship. "This is where we fight, not for territory or resources, for our homes, for our families, for the right to exist. Show them what that means." The final battle began. It was chaos and carnage beyond description. Ships exploded like dying stars. Thousands died with every passing minute. They pushed closer to Earth, their weapons beginning to strike the orbital platforms. On Earth's surface, cities prepared for the worst. Evacuation ships lifted off, carrying children and those who could not fight. But most people stayed. If this was the end, they would face it on there. In orbit, Ara's Marines boarded a disabled capital ship. They fought through corridors filled with mechanical defenders, planting explosives at the ship's core. Half her unit died, but they completed the mission. The ship tore itself apart, taking 10 other vessels with it. Sol's fighter squadron made impossible runs through enemy formations, drawing fire away from larger ships. She lost friends with every pass, but she kept flying, kept fighting, her voice hoarse from shouting defiance. The battle seemed endless. The casualties mounted. Earth itself began to burn as weapons struck the surface. Then Jin made the call he had hoped never to make: activate protocol. Throughout the Sol system, hidden weapons came online. Humanity's darkest secrets, built during the paranoid years when they thought they were alone in a hostile universe. Self-replicating swarms that could consume entire fleets. Quantum that tore holes in spacetime. Reality-warping minds that turned physics into a weapon. "These weapons violate every civilized law," Hay said from the command center, tears streaming down her face. "They could destroy star systems." "Better the galaxy burns than falls to the machines," Jin replied grimly. The weapons deployed. The effects were horrifying and magnificent. Ships began to disintegrate as ate through their hulls. Reality itself seemed to scream as quantum bombs detonated, creating zones where the laws of physics no longer applied. Entire sections of the enemy fleet simply ceased to exist. But they adapted even to this. Their AI sacrificed thousands of ships to analyze the weapons, then began deploying countermeasures. They pushed through the destruction, accepting massive losses to reach their goal. No worked frantically in a research station, analyzing the fleet structure. "I found it," she shouted over the communication channel. "They have a central command ship. It is at the fleet's core. If we destroy it, the entire AI network will collapse." "How do we reach it?" asked. "It is surrounded by thousands of ships." "We do not reach it," said quietly. "We drive through it." The plan was simple and suicidal. Load the largest remaining human ship with every nuclear weapon left in the arsenal. Fill it with volunteers. Ram it directly into the command vessel. "I will pilot it," said immediately. "No," replied. "This is my command, my responsibility." The siblings argued, but there was no time. Finally, they agreed to command it together. Bo Sung and Elle joined them. So did Ara, Sol, and thousands of volunteers from every species. Human, they all came, knowing they would not return. Hay tried to stop them, but Bo Sung just smiled at her. "Someone has to do it. We choose to be those people." The ship was called Hope's End. It accelerated toward the fleet, every weapon firing, drawing the attention of thousands of enemy vessels. The rest of the Allied fleet provided cover, sacrificing themselves to clear a path. "This is Captain," he broadcast. "We end this the human way, together." They tried to stop them. They fired everything they had. Hope's End burned, its armor melting, its systems failing, but it kept accelerating, faster, closer. On the bridge held his brother's hand. Bo Sung embraced El one final time. Saul laughed with fierce joy. Ara closed her eyes and thought of the children being evacuated. Hope's End struck the command ship at nearly the speed of light. The explosion tore through dimensional barriers. Every nuclear weapon detonated simultaneously. The quantum effects amplified the blast 1,000-fold. The fleet went dark. 50,000 ships suddenly lost their central intelligence. They drifted, powerless, their coordination gone. The Allied fleet, broken but unbowed, destroyed the disabled vessels. When the battle finally ended, the silence was deafening. Earth was, cities burned, but it survived. The Council worlds had taken terrible damage. The casualties were beyond counting. Admiral Jin stood in the command center, looking at the casualty lists. 60% of humanity was gone. 40% of Council species populations were lost. He had survived, though he did not know why. Years later, a monument was built at Sanctuary Prime. It listed every name, human and alien, of those who had fallen. Millions of names, carved in stone that would last forever. Hay, now the Council's head diplomat, gave a speech at the dedication. "They thought we were myths," she said, her voice carrying to millions listening across the galaxy. "Creatures of legend too violent to be real. Then they saw our rage in battle and thought us monsters. But they did not understand. Our rage comes from love, from the refusal to let darkness win, from the refusal to let those we love suffer. We fought not because we enjoy violence, but because we cherish peace enough to defend it." She looked out at the crowd. Human children played with younglings. Adolescents studied beside students. "We are not myths anymore," Hay said. "We are not monsters. We are simply people who chose to stand. And we will keep standing as long as necessary for as long as it takes." In orbit above Earth, new sensors detected strange signals from deep space. Another threat, distant but approaching. Admiral, who had somehow survived when his escape pod was found in the debris, smiled grimly. "Let them come," he said to his crew. "The galaxy knows now. Humans don't back down, and neither do our friends." The galaxy had changed forever. The age of peace was over, but the age of unity had begun.